Yes, two questions. One concerning family and marriage, possible children. I generally do not speak of this, and I have written nothing about it, but it has been published in biographies by people who do not like me, that I was married twice while in England. My first wife died in childbirth, as did the child. A very tragic occurrence. My second marriage was a marriage of financial convenience. I was living in the house of the Olive family, and the young lady's father had been the operator of a tobacconist's and miscellaneous goods shop. When he died, they needed help running the shop. We got married, and eventually the business failed, and it was at that time that I also, operating as an excise taxman, went up to London. The decision was made that I should go to America, and she did not come with me. She has always said good things about me, and I have sent back some money when I could to help her. But the matter of my domestic life is not one that I speak of often. I have remained single ever since. The other question is, have I renounced my opposition to Christianism? And I say no, and I say I never will. Yes.
What are your favorite books other than your own?
I wish you had not added that last qualification. My favorite books. Well, you may be surprised to know that the book I perhaps know best is the Bible. When I wrote The Age of Reason, I did not have a copy of the Bible there. I was in France, and there was not an English Bible available to me. So all of the passages that I quote in there are from memory. I had studied it quite thoroughly when I was young. My parents were quite interested in matters of religion. And I don't say that it is my favorite book, but it is certainly one that I know quite well. I am not a heavy reader. I enjoy light verse, satiric verse. I am generally more interested in open discussion than I am in reading other people's thoughts. I love the give and take of argumentation. Another question in the green shirt, I believe, was back there.
Even though you said you were not a prophet, could you ever imagine that 200 years after you lived, there would be a website called tompaine.com?
The question has to do with something called a website. Is this a place for ducks? The blue shirt in the back.
What are your thoughts on the institution of slavery in America?
The question has to do with slavery in America. I have one essay that I've written on the topic. I think it is a terrible crime. It is not something that I have devoted extensive attention to, but it is a matter that must be attended to in this country. At one point I dropped the phrase, "Forget not the hapless African." It is most unfortunate what we have done. But it is also unfortunate what we have done to the poor. The wide disparity between the livelihoods of the poor and the livelihoods of the wealthy is unforgivable. I have written a book, brief treatise, called Agrarian Justice. And in that book, I say, those people who inherit wealth from their parents should be heavily taxed. That is, their inheritance should be heavily taxed. Not so taxed that they have no inheritance, but so heavily taxed that it would give enough funds that all of those who did not inherit at the age of 21 would be given a certain start in life. I had said 15 pounds. And then those people would have something more like an even beginning. And I also said that since there are so many who are well past the age of 21 who are still living in poverty and have no prospect of living well in their old age, everyone at the age of 55 should receive an annual annuity of 10 pounds. Those would have been sufficient to support them. Well, another question perhaps, here in the yellow.
Besides your description of God in the observation of nature and the skies, could you further elaborate?
I have never met God, so I can't elaborate very far. The question was, can I elaborate on my description of God? I will say this, and I do not mean it with levity at all. I am a sincere believer. As to whether God resembles two-armed, two-legged people, I have my doubts. But I do think there is almost certainly a plurality of worlds, which then makes the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden a very strange one, doesn't it? Were there many gardens of Eden, and was this all done in a kind of repetitious manner throughout the universe? I think not. No. I do, however, have hopes for life after death. I see no reason that this could not be. Our awarenesses are so intense. How can these simply flicker out? No, I believe in a God, and I have hope for eternal life.
Could you call it a force?
I suppose one could call it a force. Yes, question here.
What do you think about Alexander Hamilton? Would you comment about him?
I'll make it brief. Alexander Hamilton is vastly overrated, especially by himself. Perhaps one more question of Thomas Paine. Here, would you stand, please?
Did you ever get fascinated with Franklin's interest in science? And how is it that you didn't discuss that with him more, like his kite experiments, his stove, and bend your intellectual talents along that direction?
The question has to do with the similarity and interest in invention between myself and Benjamin Franklin. We did, in fact, talk about this considerably. When I first met him in London, I had, at that time, become interested in the orrery. Do you know what an orrery is? It is a construction of the universe with all of the planets moving in motion. Once you set it in motion, it demonstrates all of the, at least the system of the planets in our system, moving in relationship to each other. It was a mechanical device intended to illustrate the regularity of motion of things. And I had experienced that when I was with Franklin in London. He encouraged me, and I encouraged him in our interests. Many events intervened to keep us separated, however, so we did not manage to work together on things. Well, I think it's perhaps time for Tom Paine to go back to the 18th century.